What's up, everyone? My name is Jonathan Dornbush from IGN, and today I am joined by
Joshua Nadelberg, the art director at Toys for Bob.
And Paul Yan, the studio head at Toys for Bob.
And today we are talking about the Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I am so excited. The adventure begins again, and we've got Spyro. I'm going to rewind sort of a little bit in the beginning, and I want to talk to you guys about your decisions, because this is very much sort of the original design of Spyro. But obviously you both worked with Skylander Spyro, which is a slightly different iteration on him. Tell me what went in your minds about wanting to preserve the original look of the character.
The remaster is really a love letter to fans, so we wanted to go back to the original Spyro from the original trilogy and bring him to life in a way that fans would just really relate to. This is the Spyro that you remember.
It's been 20 years since Spyro. Can you believe it? 1998. And the timing is right. We've been sitting on this secret for a while now, and it's so great to be here to talk about Spyro, the original Spyro, and bringing back the original gangster here.
And so I love from this first look already, it's from the original game. This is Spyro the Dragon 1, and we're getting a hint of that original first sort of level, that world that you get introduced to. We have the crystal encased dragon.
Yes.
Is that fair to say crystal? Is that the
They're
correct term for
trapped. The
trapped?
trapped dragons.
Yes, yeah. And we have the very familiar sort of like castle aesthetic in the background.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is the artisan's homeworld. Yeah.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about, obviously you're taking new, all scaled up. We're taking a look back at the original game versus the new game. It is absolutely gorgeous. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of what you did, that transformation, and what that took?
Well, we're rebuilding the game, and we went back and we took the original levels so that we are being entirely faithful to the original gameplay, trying to make it feel like the Spyro you played 20 years ago. And from a visual standpoint, we just had so much to work with modern technology and the next generation of consoles. We obviously made the game widescreen, but we also were able to add amazing touches like fire that burns when you breathe fire and moves out of your way as you're running through the world. Just so many layers of richness for you to explore.
Yeah, and if you scrub back, just looking at the original game, I mean, got to take a moment to appreciate that back on PlayStation 1, just the draw distance that they're accomplishing here is amazing for that time. And as a consequence, the levels have to be a little bit more sparse, and that's also the nature of the gameplay, is that it's about exploration. So with 20 years of technology and all this computing power that we have at our fingertips today, we've had this amazing challenge of what do we do to fill in the gaps, to make it more lush, to make it just more visually pleasing? Look at this physically based lighting and all of that. The grass is now interactive in fun ways. The characters are now, 100 times the resolution, but also just how much expression that we can put into it. So looking at that original footage, there's a lot that we did 20 years ago mentally, just filling in the gaps of what we're seeing and imagining, and now we're able to try and recreate that. We're trying to tap into how we remember this experience and bring that to life again.
Yeah, what I love sort of seeing about this earlier footage, there's a lot there to work with. Sort of, I see the background skyline, the enemies, and sort of the different topography that they had going. But then we jump to what you guys are working on, and there's so much there. It's so beautiful, and there's so much detail to it, and it feels like you were saying, it's what I remember as a kid brought to real life. There's so much different to it too. Like, what I love about it is there's a lot of variation going on just in a single shot like this, for example. You have the windmill and the tower and the grass and the stone. Like, everything looks beautiful. Were you inspired by anything sort of a modern design aesthetic? Was there anything you pulled from?
We looked at the original games and we tried to infer where they were going, and we tried to bring the world to life in new ways. So for example, like the windmill, this is Blowhard. This is the level where the boss is this cyclone encased wizard. So the idea of wind and movement, we wanted to try to evoke that in the environment. So we were like, great, we can add some windmills to this level, and just any place where we could kind of take the stories that they were telling back then and embellish them visually. We tried to take advantage of that.
And there's a fleeting moment in this shot specifically. If you just move forward a little bit, keep on going. Spyro's actually setting the grass on fire. You'll see it char. It's that level of detail that we put into this game that's just amazing. That's just tech that we didn't have back then, and
Yeah, you
They
can
didn't have
see it on
grass
the
back
ground.
then.
yeah, right. We're rendering individual blades of grass. That's a huge step, and now it's interactive. It'll sway with the way that Spyro moves. It's just, this is, it's fun. It's fun to play with this.
Yeah, and there's a ton of detail. Was it hard to choose what you wanted to show from the game? Because obviously we're getting much different environments here, which I think is great. Were you afraid of, obviously fans know the game, so it's not necessarily a worry of spoilers, but were you hesitant to show anything?
You
to
know,
keep things hidden?
if you notice, like there's, I think at least one level from each of the 5 realms of the original game, and so there's just so much to explore in the Spyro Reignited trilogy, and this is just a tiny taste of it. Everything has so much character and so much color and creative imagination. I mean, it's a wonderful world to have been able to work in.
This is a game where there's over like 100 levels, over 300 characters. There's
400.
over 400 characters. I know Josh is looking at me in the eye. 400. Don't count that extra. But there's just so much diversity here that it's not a struggle to pick and select variety because there's so much here.
It's an embarrassment of riches for you guys
It
to sort of
is.
pick from.
Yeah, exactly.
As something like this really struck me as I think what excites me most about the original Spyro games. Like I loved how for the time they were very open as a kid and very exciting to explore all of it, and seeing what you can explore here, just the different buildings, and even just knowing that I'll be able to fly that sort of onto the grassy field and all of that stuff. Was that exciting to explore for you guys that these games are sort of more open than I think platformers of that time were to a certain extent? Obviously, something like Crash is more linear, but other games, like opening these worlds up is really exciting.
Yeah.
What did you sort of do to bring those worlds to life in any particular way and to keep that openness, that feeling of openness alive?
Well, first of all, you're totally right. This game was ahead of its time, not just in the technology that was how they rendered these open planes, but the focus on exploration and that there's gliding involved in addition to jump. For us, the number one goal was how do we stay true? How do we honor that original thing before we even dip our toes into invention? We want to make sure that it feels exactly right to how you remember it.
And yeah, stuff like this is, I remember that pathway, but it looks more beautiful. And having just sort of replayed the first game for a little bit just to refresh my memory, it's, oh wow, there's a sort of night and day difference, but the feel is there, like what I remember is there, but it's what I actually remember come to life. Was there anything challenging? We've seen like a lot of enemy types in here. This is one of my favorite moments, I think, in the trailer. What was, you want to capture, I think, the character of these characters. There's a lot of personality in so much of these characters that you get to bring to life because of the higher resolution, the more detailed graphics. Is that sort of what was behind this moment, especially, I think?
Showing this moment in the trailer?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the breadth of characters, it's just awesome. And this one in particular, this was one of the first characters that, like, we really felt like we kind of nailed the direction and the amount of the new personality that we could bring to these characters. So Toasty is a very disgruntled sheep who does not like his dragon. So he is on stilts inside of a scarecrow, and he peeks his head out. There's just so much imagination that went into the original trilogy, and being able to like use that as a jumping off point and redesign and rethink these characters and these worlds. I mean, it was a dream project to work on.
And Toasty was a big personality back then. There was a lot of the marketing, the commercials were campaigned around that character. So it was a great nod, a great place to start off to figure out our tone before we branch out to the rest of the games.
And I really like sort of this little beat with Spyro too, of just being like, what's going on there? Yeah,
that was a sheep.
Yeah, that's what I saw, right? Yeah, with a jack-o'-lantern head. That's what's going on. Yeah, I love that you're bringing the personality out, but there's so much from those games that I still remember, and I'm very excited to see what you've done with it. As the trailer says, you've rekindled my fire, my excitement for Spyro.
Success.
Yes, I'm very excited. We have the original sort of box art here. I assume you guys took sort of a similar approach with all 3 games, even though they expanded and everything was very much about keeping the essence that you remember of them true to them. Yeah. And was there anything else exciting about this first look that you really hoped fans would be surprised to see, excited to see? We sort of have the return of the crystals. I very much remember as a child having a lot of difficulty. I'm like, I need to find every single one of these dragons. And so seeing this both made me excited, but also a little like, oh no, I'm going to, hopefully I remember where all of them are.
Oh man, the dragons are probably my favorite thing about the game, and I think people are gonna treasure finding each and every one.
Yeah, there's a lot of personality just baked into even these very short interactions you have with each of them, and this was like a great reminder of that for me. Also, the enemy variety. Also, Crash running is such. I think a lot of Crash, his fire and his gliding, but the sort of the charge attack is so important to nail to the feel of that. Has that been something with obviously like modernized controls that you guys have been working to make sure still feels great?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, so a big part of Spyro is that fluidity of movement and controlling on those long runs and making sure that when you hit your glide at the right time, you are able to land on the right platform. Spend and are continuing to spend a ton of time paying attention to all that detail. And, you know, one of the big changes is that the game debuted on PS1. It didn't have an analog stick. There was no real precision camera control, and that's something that's going to immediately modernize the experience. But it affects the way that you actually control the characters. So we've been paying a lot of attention to that and making sure that, you know, original players, a lot of original fans, even within the studio, that muscle memory returns back and it feels like that same game, just completely brand new and imagined in a modern way.
And I absolutely love the variety. It's a sort of a quick succession of shots before we get to that great stinger at the end. But just as Spyro's running along through all these beautiful environments, one reminded me of how much variety there is in these games, which I assume must be somewhat of an undertaking to go from that like beautiful snowy vista to sort of these more like underground, like the trees and everything, and then you get more like underground cavernous regions. Was that sort of a challenge to tackle so many different varieties? Obviously you have experience with sort of the...
You know, the Spyro Reignited trilogy, it's 3 games, 100 levels. There are themes throughout, but like every level in when you played through the original game, the skies would change color, and they really put a lot of thought into it back then to make every level kind of flow from the next and make you feel like you're on a great adventure. And we really wanted to enhance that feeling and make you feel like every bit of progress you make in the game, you're exploring this rich world, and it's really exciting to be able to share just a taste of that with you guys today.
Certainly challenge of scope. I mean, it's a ton of stuff, ton of worlds, a ton of characters, but also it's some of the best kind of challenge creatively, because this is such a fun world. It's enchanting, and there's so much color and personality. This is kind of why a lot of us got into the industry, is to make games like this. So it's a great place to return to.
Yeah, I assume it must sort of be a challenge, but a welcome one.
Right.
A creative challenge. Much like it will be challenging to go back and hope I remember where all the collectibles are and everything, which I'm very excited, and that sort of all these looks gave me that reminder of that, and then this final little stinger. I love the bit of, and I feel like it nails sort of the character and personality, is just the menacingness of Spyro chasing a sheep on stilts after he's been set on fire. I think just captures so much of the essence of what this game is.
He's a determined little Spitfire.
Oh, yeah.
He does.
And obviously, of course, we get the title at the end, the Reignited Trilogy, a wonderful pun, and much as the trailer shows, I hope for many puns to come, as we'll see.
Yes.
But thank you both so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Spyro Reignited Trilogy hits on September 21st for PS4 and Xbox One.
This year for the 20th anniversary.
Yes. Spyro's almost as old as me. That's weird. But thank you both so much for joining me. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And for all your Spyro news, stay tuned to IGN.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, check out some of our other videos on IGN.com and our YouTube channel. For more news, tips, and videos on your favorite games and entertainment, keep it here at IGN.